Hi everyone, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my monthly wrap-up. So in the month of March I had an interesting reading month. I read a lot at the beginning and then not a lot towards the middle end of the month, but that's okay because I did end up finishing 5 books and I'm excited to be going into next month where I'm doing a readathon, which will hopefully keep me on track. So first we're going to go over the manga I read and then we will go in order from least favorite to favorite. But starting with manga, we have Yona of the Dawn, volume 34 by Mizuho Kusanagi. This is a shoujo fantasy series. It's got action, it's got romance, it's got great character development, and it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite series, and I've been collecting it since it's been coming out. I personally love to compare fan translations or unofficial translations to the official ones. I think the choices are really interesting between what different translators do. And I read this volume originally as a translation, and I didn't really like it. It made me think that I was like, ooh, I don't like the plot of where this is going. This particular volume deals a lot with talking about the historical context, like the background for a lot of these characters' parents and how these characters got into the situations they are in today. And the fan translation or the unofficial translations made it seem a lot more like destiny, like the main character's father made all this happen, like he knew this was going to happen, and it kind of made it feel like Yona didn't do anything herself because it was all kind of destiny. And this translation added a lot more nuance to it. It really seemed like the characters ended up in these situations not because of like fate or destiny, but because of the choices and consequences of those choices. And like while they might know certain things that were going to happen, it was a lot more vague in their decisions. Normally I prefer the unofficial translations. I think normally those bring a lot more nuance, but for whatever reason this particular translation just didn't work for these chapters for me, and I was so excited to read this version of the translation and particularly just enjoy it a lot more. So yes, I love this. It's one of my favorite series and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. But now we're gonna go into my least favorite reads of the month, and that is going to be Oaths of Legacy by Emily Skrensky. This is the second book to Bonds of Brass, which I read last month. I love Bonds of Brass. I thought it was a super fun, rompy, yet character-focused space opera story, and this one just was really a big disappointment. I think there were a lot of issues with this book. There was a lot of pacing issues specifically. This is a very slow book where not a lot happens. It very much feels like that middle book in a series. This book follows Gal as the main character instead of Etienne like the first book, and it is in a first-person perspective, and we are, in my opinion, a little bit too close to the character, so there's no nuance in his thinking and actions. And it was kind of difficult to be in his head the whole time. Particularly this first-person perspective was not well done in my opinion, or not a good choice for this novel, because at least I think I can see where Gal's thinking is wrong. He's grown up in this imperial mindset, and he has this certain morality or ideas of how people are supposed to act when they're the emperor of an empire. And so while I see his thinking of wrong, obviously Gal doesn't. And I thought this book was all about him going to be changing his mindset and slowly growing out of it and realizing the harm that his empire has done. But it really doesn't go in that direction, and so it made it really difficult to sympathize with him, even though I really loved him in the first book. So I wonder why the plot had to be so slow-paced, why we had to spend so much time on these particular plot moments, when it didn't really feel like the characters were growing from the time we spent with them. At the end of this book, spoiler alert, Gal does change his mind, but it's only because of his love for Etienne, which was something that I liked in the first book. I really liked the idea of Etienne in the first book giving up all his values, giving up this war between these two empires, because the only thing important to him is saving his best friend. I thought it added a really complex, nuanced take to Etienne as a character, because there's this struggle between personal loyalties and duty or loyalties to your country or empire. And I feel like this book was trying to do the same thing with Gal, but it didn't really work for me. I just wanted him to realize certain stuff without Etienne's presence, and he really didn't realize that much. He didn't really change that much. His motivations changed, but his thinking didn't really change. This book set up a lot for the third book, so I'm anxious to see how everything plays out in the end, but I'm not super optimistic because, again, this second book just didn't work super well for me. This is an adult sci-fi series that has a lot of potential for crossover. It has a lot of potential for like that back and forth angst and really good character development, but we didn't see any of the promise from the first book in this one, at least for me. So I gave this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. It's well written, it does have some interesting plot at the end, but you really have to slog slog, or at least I had to really slog through this book to get to that. The next book I have is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and I gave this a 3.75 or 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is basically a Regency romance set in what feels like a Latinx fantasy Regency time period. There is magic or like psychokinetic abilities which our main character possesses, but it's really more about the romance, the angsty love triangle, and the main character growing into herself and having a coming of age moment. So this book is really interesting. There are 3 different perspectives. One of them is the main character, one is the love interest, and our other perspective is the other end of the love triangle. This was a really fun book. It felt very soap opera-y in a Regency time period. Like, I really love Regency movies, so this really worked for me. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I thought that the author did a really good job bringing a lot of nuance and sympathy to these characters who are definitely flawed. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to pick up more books by her because there are other books I'm interested in. This is just the one I happened to have had because my mom gave this to me, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. The next book I have is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is the first book in a new short novella series, and I love this. I love all of Becky Chambers' works, and I especially loved this. This is about like a futuristic Earth, and this story focuses on a monk who does tea services, who is trying to find themselves, and one day they stumble into the forest and they meet a robot which no human has seen for a very long time. This was cute and lovely and simple and sweet. It had great moments of character realization and like philosophy without being like corny or pretentious, and I just really loved this. It really worked for me, and it was so sweet, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And then the final book I read, and my favorite book of the month, is Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, and this I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars to. So Harrow the Ninth is the second book in the Locked Tomb series. This is a fantasy sci-fi series about lesbian necromancers in space. That's the kind of tagline everybody gives for it. That's kind of what it is. So far, the first 2 books have been very different from each other. This book in particular was weird and confusing. It was non-linear. The character thinks she's going crazy. A lot of stuff was happening, and not all of it made sense, but oh boy was it enjoyable. This is a wild ride, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I particularly love our main character, Harrow. I just love her. I think she's really interesting and funny. And I really enjoyed this author's writing and their ideas. And so while I might not know everything that's going on all the time, I really enjoy what they do. And I'm excited to see the story unravel further because we're slowly getting small pictures of it. I hope the puzzle comes together. I'm not sure it will, but I'm excited to see the attempt. Gideon of the Ninth, Harrow of the Ninth, I like this series a lot. I'm really enjoying it. But not everybody's gonna like it. I would recommend it, but not everybody will enjoy it. It's a very particular series for a very particular kind of person. But yeah, these are all the books that I read this month. Did have some chunkier reads on there, so that's always great. And I'm looking forward to April and my reading there. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later, and happy reading.